I'm 8 years old. And next to me, my mother says, focus. Do it for your father. He loves Bobby Bonilla. We're at a baseball game. But as a chubby 8-year-old, sports aren't really my sport. So instead of watching the game, I'm reading a fantasy novel series called Dragonlance. She says, picture what you want to happen and the world will respond. Where will Bobby hit the ball? And I say, I don't know, left field, home run. It's the least I can do for my dad. He's got us these tickets, and when he looks at me reading in the stands, there's this expression on his face, like he swallowed a live gopher. So this is the least I can do. His team's down, the score is tied. It's my turn. I put down the book, I take her hand, and she says, inhale, picture the swing, exhale. And the pitcher winds up, and it's fast, inside, and Bobby swings, and he misses. And she looks at me and she says, were you picturing it? And I thought I had, but I must have done something wrong. So I try much harder on the second pitch. And it comes, and Bobby connects, and it goes high and lands foul. She looks at me desperately. She's like, 2 strikes. So I summon every ounce of will I have, and I squeeze my eyes shut. And I inhale, picture the swing, and there's a crack, bat on ball, and I open my eyes, and the ball is going. It's a left field homer. My dad's on his feet screaming, but not as fast as my mom. And she's beaming down at me, and she looks at me and she says, we did that. And I'm clapping too, but a little voice inside my head is like, did we really? Like, don't get me wrong, I want it to have been us, but it could have been coincidence, right? It's 6 months later. It's dusk, and we're at a ditch at the side of the road. And my mother says, you have to focus, Scott. His skull is cracked. And underneath my hands is my grandfather's head, and it's bleeding through my fingers. We were driving behind him when his car crashed. And she says, picture the healing energy flowing through your crown chakra. And I can feel scalp slide across skull underneath my hands. And she says, you have to focus. I'm 9 years old now, and I can promise you at this moment, I am focused as hell. Picture the healing energy flowing through your hands, knitting bones together. And I can picture it, I can see it's silver, the energy's silver, then it turns blue, then it turns red. I open my eyes, there's an ambulance. My father's arrived with an ambulance, there are paramedics running towards us with a stretcher. And 6 hours later, we're in an emergency room. And the doctor comes out and says they had to put 25 stitches in my grandfather's head, but there was no sign of skull damage. And my mother's laughing and crying with relief at the same time, and she beams down at me and she says, of course there's not any sign of skull damage. We healed that. Now, Bobby Bonilla could have been coincidence. But this? No. Now I'm starting to understand. My mother is training me to be a superhero. By the time I turned 10, I've hit a home run for the Mets, saved my grandfather's life. I can read the minds of small animals, and on one notable occasion, I used my powers to reach out and touch the hands of fate to prevent our plane from going down in heavy turbulence. That's a true story. But the next year, it all comes crashing down. I'm on a school field trip, and it's to one of those colonial reenactment villages. And my friend Danny and I are standing next to each other, and we're watching a woman in a bonnet churn butter with a big stick. And in a small, quiet voice, Danny says, my parents are getting divorced. Now, I can tell this is a big deal for him, and I want to use my powers for good. I want to pay it forward, and I know every superhero needs a sidekick. So I say, Danny, have you ever pictured them, really pictured them not getting divorced? Now, in the entire universe, probably all this kid needs to hear is, Danny, it's not your fault. What I am saying is the opposite of that. I'm saying you can save your parents' marriage. And if you don't, that shit's on you. And the woman with the bonnet and the butter rod kind of looks up at me and her eyes say, "Kid, you're a dick." But I don't care. I am just so thrilled. And Danny eats it up. And I explain the whole thing, just how it all works. On the bus ride home, he is taking notes. And it's Friday when I get home. And I just can't wait for Monday to find out how it all worked. So I get to school Monday, and Danny comes in, but he's got bad news. It didn't work, and his new therapist says he's not allowed to talk to me anymore. Now, as a 10-year-old fantasy geek who believes he has magic powers, it might shock you to know that at this moment in my life, I don't have a ton of friends. So this hits me hard, and I go home and I tell my mother. Well, what do you think she says? We can fix this. So we do the whole thing. I picture the way the call's gonna go, the way I'm gonna pick it up, the way Danny's gonna answer, the way I'm gonna apologize, the way he's gonna laugh and say, "No problem, Scott." And I work up my courage, and I open my eyes, and I pick up the phone, and I just picture Bobby Bonilla in that swing, and I dial. But Danny doesn't pick up the phone. Danny's mother picks up the phone, and she knows who I am. And the conversation does not go as I had pre-visualized it. I don't remember all the words, but I remember some of the words. There are words like meddling, idiotic, delusional. It does not go well. We do not end up friends. And for months after that, I tried to use my powers to make us friends again, but it seems they have finally deserted me. I was brought up to believe I could do anything I put my mind to, and that's great. But this was my first and a different kind of lesson. This was my first lesson that there is just some shit you cannot control. And I'm good with that. Not my mother. To this day, she is 100% convinced that Bobby Bonilla owes us that home run. And after the show, you can ask her, because she's right there. And to her and my partner Sophie, and to all the mothers here, a very happy Mother's Day weekend. I may not have turned out to be a superhero, but you all certainly are. Thank you.
Scott Gabriel, everybody.